we need to talk about open source versus closed source and what is going on in the world of AI. Obviously, if you've been following it, you've seen Kimi K3, you've seen Qwen 3.8, and then you've obviously seen the US models, Grok 4.5, ChatGPT 5.6. I don't know why they do these fucking things where they do zero point 0.1 increments, and then obviously Fable 5, which got to give Claude credit, they moved up to 5. But the argument really is that what is going on? What are we doing? Like, is this a competition between open source and open weight? Which, there's arguments that China is doing this on purpose to tank the US stock market, which is a valid argument. They do this with other industries as well. But then there's the argument of closed source is the only way to go, which honestly, obviously, people have seen what's going on with flock cameras and all this other bullshit. I don't have to tell you about your data. It's all over the internet. You don't really have control over it. And, obviously the government controls a lot of things, plus the argument that these AI models were trained off data that, we didn't really give them in the first place because the internet is an open source project. But the problem is where we're headed is going to be the issue, is that we really have the turning of the two paths. If you've ever seen the meme, obviously, you have two choices, the scary house or whatever, the Elysium you want to call it. But that's where we're at, is that either we're going to go through a period of where most people are going to say, yes, regulate us. These three AI companies, two, one, whatever it may be, are the saviors and we have to trust them. Or we get a wake-up call and say, hey, listen, open weight, open source is important because we are giving birth or let's say we're creating a technology or adding upon a technology that is going to be so powerful in the future that we can't let humans alone control it. It needs to be the world's. Anybody in the world can control it. Obviously, this comes with ramifications of giving access to models that can hack into bank accounts, etc. That's also a problem. But the bigger issue is that we set up a system in the past, right, of this whole financial system, et cetera, that's built online, that already is going to be in jeopardy in the first place. So the issue that is going to transpire is that, let's say OpenAI and Claude, great example, are the ones that have access to it and they have selective access to the companies. That's just going to crush everyone who doesn't. So if you're a startup and you don't have access to the new flagship model, and let's say they crush open source and open source doesn't exist anymore, Chinese models can't compete, or Russian, whatever, other country models, open source models can't compete. So the companies that have access to it, or the startups that have access to the closed source models, crush everybody who doesn't. So I'm not really buying the argument that open source is dangerous in the short term or long term as closed source, because the issue is that these closed source models have selective access. Open source has selective access to anybody. You saw with Fable 5 or now Mythos. So, and plus, again, these models are trained off your data that is on the internet, Reddit, Facebook, Google. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the future. Obviously, I like to call this a ChatGPT moment, the AI moment, the big boom, big whatever you want to call it, the internet boom, because it really is a pivotal moment in history of where you have open source, open weight models competing with closed source. So the argument's debunked that you need to be closed source to make the best models. So it is going to be interesting to see what happens, because what do we do? Where are we going? Where are we headed? Who's going to step in? Are Chinese models going to be banned in the United States? Are US models going to be banned in China? Are people not going to have access to these things? It's going to be an interesting time. I honestly am an optimist. I'm a techno-optimist. I'm an accelerationist. I think that a lot of these things are going to push the boundaries of what is possible. And, if you want to regulate, you want to be closed source, good luck. That doesn't help you. If you look at the past, honestly, the people that have open source projects like Bitcoin, et cetera, have came a long way in technology. But you're going to see a weird, hopefully dystopian rhetoric from the United States. And it's unfortunate. I don't agree with it, but I just think it's going to be an interesting time to live in, especially about somebody being in AI. So I don't really know where we go from here. It's definitely a openings of a Pandora's box, one would call it, but who knows what the future holds in this space, because I want to be an optimist, but I also know, I'm a realist in the world we live in. but it's definitely going to be an interesting time to be alive in the next 6 months to a year.